Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are in our 25th season, I talk to writers about their craft. We have on poets, we have on novelists, short story writers, memoirists, playwrights, all sorts of writers. We even extend some time to other brands of artists. We have had on composers, musicians, actors, sculptors, architects. It's a very wide net that we cast. So if you have an idea for someone who might be good for the Writer's Block, a writer or other sort of artist, watch for our address at the end of the program. We'd be very happy to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that the Writer's Block and all the other wonderful original productions that come out of KPAN TV is the result of public access cable television. It's a wonderful community service that is not available with Dish. So don't be tempted by those ads. Stick with us in cable and stick with community produced television. Tonight, I'm happy to say we do have a writer. His name is Orrin Canfield, and he has written a very interesting memoir about growing up and surviving to his ripe old age of 46?
40.
40? 40. Of 40. I'm going to read from the jacket of his book, Long Past Stopping, for the introduction. Orrin Canfield was raised here in Massachusetts, but also in Philadelphia, Central America, Mexico, Arizona, and San Francisco. While attending the San Francisco Art Institute, Orrin began his career as a drummer and became heavily involved in San Francisco's underground music and art communities. Along with his involvement as a drummer for numerous bands in the 1990s, he also owned and operated a recording studio and cooperated a music venue featuring experimental and creative jazz. He has also been a bike messenger, a piano restorer, a house cleaner, a limo driver, and a sex toy maker. I don't know if we'll get to all of those, but they do get my curiosity going. Early in 2001, after 7 separate stints in rehab, he got clean after attending an experimental treatment center in the Caribbean. He now lives in Brooklyn with his wife Kyoko and their son Ozzy. Orrin Canfield, welcome to
Thank you.
the Writer's Block.
Great to be here.
And you came a long way. I'm very pleased you could come up
We had a bit of a drive
from
today.
New York. This is the book that we're going to be talking about, Long Last Stopping. And I should point out that picture is not Orrin in his youth. That's a Corbis archive photograph of a very young clown smoking a very long cigarette.
However, he looks how I felt.
That's how you felt?
I think so.
Did they ask you to approve the cover?
They did, yeah, and I thought it was perfect. Actually, I think it was the first cover they showed me.
No problems making
No
decisions.
issues whatsoever.
I mentioned before the show I was going to ask some general questions. You grew up in Massachusetts. How long did you live in Massachusetts, and where?
Not long. I lived in Leverett until I was 1, and then spent maybe 3 or 4 months there 4 or 5 years later. Maybe 5 years later. So not much time in Massachusetts. I think we were on the East Coast. We moved from Massachusetts to Philly, so I had some connection visiting my father up until that point. And then when we moved to the West Coast, I think my dad followed us out there eventually.
Most of the book takes place
On the West Coast,
on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So
My memories of Leverett are hazy. And that's
imagine.
because of my age, not because of
I can imagine.
any substances.
Oh, mine's hazy for many reasons. You have been in many, many occupations trying to survive.
That's true.
You have survived. what moved you when you were moving through these different occupations to decide to write a memoir, essentially autobiography about your experiences in your family?
Yeah. It seems that whenever I told stories about my life, even as a teenager, people were like, "Oh, you should write a book." And I said, "Well, that would be great, except I can't write." I guess that's a classic feeling. But like, I literally couldn't write. I got Fs in English classes and had to take exams orally and stuff like that. So later, I think I was I was in my early 30s, mid 30s, and I literally woke up in the morning one day and had this title in my head. And I mentioned the title to my friend that day. I never do this, but I got up and I found a piece of paper and jotted down the title, because I was like, I don't want to forget this one. And it's not the title of the book.
Oh, what was that title?
That title was Give Me Some Bread with That Chicken Soup, which it didn't get used, but it did instigate the whole thing. So,
did you put that on the manuscript that you sent out?
Absolutely, yeah. That
And
was on the proposal. And
they didn't like it because it was too long?
No, they liked it. They liked it fine. I think in the end, the backstory to that is my dad wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I don't think that was in the introduction.
No, it wasn't. I want to talk about that.
And through a course of very weird circumstances, I don't know what happened, but my publisher my original publisher was Regan. And they got shut down by O.J. Simpson. And through a course of very weird circumstances, me and my dad ended up with the same publisher.
Morrow.
Well, HarperCollins. I don't know if he's on the Morrow imprint, but he's a part of that family.
So when did you start then writing the book?
I started writing it in about, I started in like 2007, I think, writing the proposal. Took about a year to get that thing together, enough to send it out to publishers. Then it took, it takes time, and didn't do any work on it in between writing the proposal and actually getting a book deal. Because like I said, I'm not a writer, and I kind of felt like if it's very weird, because I'm so anti-mysticism and God and this and that, but there was this feeling like if I get a deal, it's meant to happen and I can do it. So
you did get the deal.
I did get the deal. And
then there's some pressure.
Then it was on. And so that, they told me when they bought the book, oh, we usually give writers 6 months. I was like, oh my God, I need at least a year. Even that, I was like, I couldn't imagine. It ended up taking about 2 years before it came out.
And this was published in 2009, I think?
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah.
This is a very personal autobiography.
Yes.
And it's also about your family.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more? You mentioned your father. And your father and mom are in this throughout. Can you tell us about your family? And I think it would be fair to say there was some tension and dysfunction there.
There was. I didn't grow up with my dad, hence the original working title, Give Me Some Bread with That Chicken Soup.
Okay, go back and explain the chicken soup titles again.
My father's Jack Canfield, who writes the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, or is at least he's on the title of the books. So there are compilations of each book has 101 stories written by other people.
To make you feel good.
To make you feel good.
Whatever you want. Feel good.
Yeah, I laugh because I didn't feel very good as a kid, I guess. And there was actually, our relationship was very minimal. I think his presence in the book, and this goes back to why the title was changed, is he's not really in it that much. He's not really there that much. He's more of a name out there that, I would see posters at school that he was coming to town to do talks, but didn't have any notification that he was, from him, that he was coming. Or I would see a poster after the fact,
Without any contact.
So it was, and I mean, I think added to that, his profession is a very complicated kind of thing to navigate, that he was on the, Children's Self-Esteem Task Force in California, appointed by the governor to instill self-esteem in children, and wrote books about it and taught workshops on it, and we never saw him. But
So he was not good instilling self-esteem in you and Kyle, your brother.
no, I would say we both have suffer from self-esteem issues.
Because your father wasn't present.
Who knows? I don't know.
Your mom is throughout the book.
Yeah. Well, she was
much-
very involved.
much more
maybe too involved at
Present
times.
than your father.
Yeah. Yeah, she raised us by herself, I mean, she didn't have any help. And she might have been too involved at times. I mean, when I was 7, she gave up her career as a therapist to focus on my career as a juggler. I don't even know how to elaborate on that.
She was a doctor. She was
Yes. She's a psychologist.
a psychologist.
Mhm.
Before the program started, I mentioned a section in there where you auditioned for a circus.
Right.
And would you mind reading a little part of that?
Sure.
This,
I haven't read this in a while, but we'll give it a shot. I was 9 years old at this point, and we had recently moved to the Bay Area, and my mom set up an audition for me with a local traveling circus.
And I lost the page. I pointed out to you before, and now
I dog-eared it, and it's page 88 and 89. I say local traveling circus, which sounds like a contradiction, but we traveled throughout Northern California. And so for the summers, for 2 years, I did not live at home. But anyway, that's later on. This is at the audition, and 9 years old, going to join a circus. The audition was at a big compound called The Farm in San Francisco's Mission District. I juggled in front of a few people who then asked me why I wanted to join the circus. I told them I just want to make people happy, which was the stock line I had been using whenever I was asked why I juggled. This explanation always made me feel like a liar and a fraud, but no one ever questioned it. After seeing my mom hand a check to the woman who appeared to be in charge, I was informed that I had been accepted. The exchange of money was never mentioned to me, but it was hard not to wonder how much passing the audition had to do with that check. It worked the other way around with the rest of the performers. At the end of the week, Letitia, the director, would walk around and hand them checks. It bothered me that I had been accepted because of a payoff rather than my skill as a juggler. Granted, I had just turned 9 years old, but I was by far the best juggler there. I tried to put it out of my mind, thinking this was just a trial period. Once they realized how talented I was, they would start paying me instead of the other way around. Shortly after my audition, Mom worked out a deal with my school where I was able to get credit for life experience in the circus, so I stopped going to class and started taking the bus to San Francisco every day for intense rehearsals. The circus was small, there were only 5 performers, which meant that just being a juggler, me, or a tightrope walker, Francesco, or a trapeze artist, Pierre, or an acrobat, Robert, wasn't enough. Even though each of us had our specialty, we all had to do a bit of everything. Letitia, who didn't really have any circus skills, was the director and main clown. For 10 hours a day, I practiced acrobatics, tightrope walking, stilts, trapeze, and slapstick. When I wasn't working on that stuff, I was teaching the others how to juggle. It was hard work, I was always sore, and my armpits were in constant pain from jumping off a three-high 20 times a day. Seems like a weird place to end without describing what the three-high is, but
What is a three-high?
the three-high was me juggling, standing on the shoulders of two other people. So
That's a three-high.
that's a three-high, and I was at the top juggling, and geez, I think, for a couple hours a day, I would practice climbing up there and jumping off, and the guy would catch me with his thumbs in my armpits, and it was horrendous. I feel like that I should say more about it.
Do you still juggle? Can you still
I
juggle?
can still juggle. It's very rare that I actually do, and it's usually in a situation, I don't know, I guess people occasionally ask me to juggle for their kids, or it comes up in the weirdest ways, to be honest. But,
So you can pick up 10 cans of Coke and keep them.
I can't do 10. I can't. I could do 7 when I was a kid. I'm down to about 5 now, and not for nearly as long as I was able to do it back then. But I can still do
You
it.
have to stay in practice.
Yeah.
It's like everything else.
Yeah.
I like that, especially because you were so young. You're 9. You're in a circus, and there are many other fairly exotic circumstances or experiences in here.
Yeah. They don't end there.
No, they don't. They're just starting there. One of the interesting subjects is that you were involved with drugs and got out.
Yes, that is the way the way the book is, the way it's structured is the alternating chapters. So I think right around that chapter is where I start. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, they alternate between when basically the other narrative starts when I'm about 21 or 23 or something like that, and it starts with my introduction to heroin, and that occurred around 23 after. I would say that those are the less colorful stories in a way. I mean, they're dramatic and intense, but there was a lot leading up to that, and the way it's written, you can see kind of parallels of like childhood experiences that might have or might not have lent themselves to me winding up going in that direction at that age. They're unintentional, but even for me, I think it was an eye-opener reading it straight through and kind of seeing parts of my story that were obviously kind of, led me to drugs, I guess.
Well, and much of it is very, very intense.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that impressed me about the book is that you left that. Can you describe that kind of the impetus for that reaction?
That I left, that I'm not doing drugs
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, the impetus is that it wasn't sustainable. I mean, it was not sustainable at all. And it took me down so fast and so hard that, literally after maybe just, really quickly, like 2 or 3 years of using, I was surprised I was still alive, to be honest.
Many aren't.
And many aren't. And I might not. Maybe I shouldn't have been. I feel like there was just the way I used was so intense and so just full on that it was kind of it's kind of a miracle I'm still here. But I think the real impetus. The real thing that. There was a lot, because there's a little bit of like, using and functioning, a very small percentage of this book. And then the rest of it is trying with no success to get sober or to get clean. And I think at a certain point, I mean, there was many rehabs, and I think I learned a little bit, or, I think these were all stepping stones that I needed to take to eventually get sober. And then there's the last chapter, which is me partaking in an experimental treatment involving an hallucinogenic.
In the Caribbean.
In the Caribbean, yeah.
You mentioned many rehab stints. I was thinking about, there's a television show called Rehab Addict.
Mm-hmm.
It's about rehabbing houses.
Right. Yeah. So I was in a few of those.
But it's a nice title. They want that
Yeah.
catchy confusion there
Yeah.
about whether you're talking about houses or people.
Oh, like rehabilitation and.
Yeah. And that was 15 years ago, or 13,
yeah,
14?
I mean, the whole process started maybe, when I was, when I was, I think 23 is when I went to my first rehab. So it's been a while. I've been sober for 13 years.
But I guess I'm looking for some kind of alarm that sounded. A lot of people go on and off drugs.
The alarm was
for decades.
The alarm, and I don't know if it was an alarm. It was, first of all, the one thing was that I wasn't dead yet, and the idea of existing in that space or in that place, inhabiting the shell of a human kind of existence was much more frightening to me than the idea of not existing. And considering how much I went through and the fact that I was still alive, it wasn't looking like it was going to end anytime soon. If I didn't. I think that was part of it, but it was complex. And I think the main thing was, for me, I wanted so bad to be sober, but the benefit that I had gotten from drugs for that limited amount of time where it worked was such a huge relief that I think it was more like physiologically, I just wasn't able to let go of the idea that might be a possibility again. And it wasn't. But for someone who was as uncomfortable in their own skin as I was, and I think more than low self-esteem, I think someone who hated themselves as much as I did, the relief I got from heroin for, 6 months or something, maybe, if that, was so unbelievable. And that it was like, even though my brain knew that it was never going to happen again, my body kept trying to relive that experience. And to me, that experience, that initial experience, was what I felt like everyone else was born with. So it wasn't like the euphoria or the high. It was simply being able to walk into a social situation and be normal, and be present, and be able to have a conversation without, the anxiety and.
I think something's wrong with a lot of advertising against alcohol or against cocaine or against heroin. Doesn't mention that it makes you feel real good.
No.
Otherwise nobody would go near it.
No.
I just got from Liz the 3-minute signal.
Oh, really? Already?
Yeah. So
that was quick.
It is.
I feel like there was a lot more to cover.
There is.
Yeah.
There is more. You have to come back. Where can our viewers get?
You can always go
long past
you can always go to a local bookstore and ask for it, and they most likely won't have it, but they can get it. The other option is Amazon, and
Barnes and Noble. Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It is called longpaststopping.com.
I'm going to hold the book up again, see if Liz can get a shot. This is the book, Long Past Stopping by Orrin Canfield, and the website is longpaststopping.com. So you can go to that, or you can go to Amazon and get the book and find out more exciting details. I want to say intense details about Orrin Canfield's background, especially the family.
The family stuff, yeah, we didn't even really get
No,
into it.
we know no, but it's amazing that your father spent a career trying to make people feel good and advise people about how to give
This
self-esteem
is the
to their
irony.
kids.
This is
and-
what, but you know, that's what, that was the inspiration for the book, even though he didn't really end up in it. So, but yeah,
He's in it a couple times.
he's in it
Kind
a
of
couple
doesn't,
times.
Doesn't
And his
quite.
absence is well noted,
Yes.
I think.
Orrin Canfield, thanks very much for coming to the Writer's Block.
Thanks for having
Appreciate
me. It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank our television audience out there as well. If you've learned something about long past stopping, Orrin Canfield's very interesting, and I want to say often intense memoir or autobiography, then the Writer's Block has done its job. I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.